welcome to another episode of The Harvest with me, Carmel Fisher. On today's Thought Leader series, we're interviewing Ahraz Husain. He is an AI-driven pioneer, and he lives between the intersection of finance and agriculture. We're looking forward to an exciting conversation. Ahraz, welcome, and tell us more about yourself straight off the bat.
Absolutely. Thank you for the warm welcome, Carmel. Pretty excited to be here talking to you this morning. Little about me. My name is Ahraz Husain, as you introduced already. I work for a startup, an Agri-Fintech startup out of Johnston, Iowa. We've been around for a couple of years. Uh, at this startup, I lead our product engineering and data science teams. Really, the fixation I have is innovation and driving innovation into the hands of farmers so as to be able to make an impact, right, on that community. I've been in ag for almost a decade at this point, mostly around the spaces that serve farmers. So all the way from input providers, seed, chemistry to financing, and to some degree, insurtech, warranty tech kind of a space. Like I've had a chance to operate within all of those, and data AI is something that's what I'm passionate about. Nothing more satisfying than being able to put my experience, my expertise, to good use, as well as the chance to work with such a broad spectrum of experts and professionals that I get to as a part of doing that.
I bet, AI is such a big buzzword and data has always been a very, of course, big part of that. Looking at the space that you primarily exist within, which is the agri finance world, how is AI revolutionizing risk assessment in agricultural lending?
Absolutely, that's a wonderful question. Again, in a nutshell, ag is no different than any other sector, right? With some caveats, the biggest one being the impact of weather to actual outcomes, as well as a lot of global interdependencies. I would say the biggest thing AI has brought to ag finance pretty much is, concepts that we see in other industries already, right? Personal finance is a concept, obviously, better risk management, better risk estimations, which play heavily into insurance or financing and lending. Uh, Ag generally, as I like to say, at least in the Americas, is very finance driven. In other countries, a little less so. And finance driven, I really mean lending driven, financing driven, to be precise. So from an AI perspective, it's been pretty fascinating to see how things have evolved and continue evolving from a standpoint of all the alternate ways we've been able to establish to analyze risk at literally a farm level and even sometimes sub farm level down to field. What if a farmer buys this field? Can we model the net impact of that decision to the volatility from a farm income basis? So, AKA, is this acquisition going to hurt them negatively, or is it truly a positive outcome, and so on? So, to me, that's one of the most exciting spaces. Again, more complex modeling, if you will, that can pull together infinite almost amounts of data points for each farmer, all the way from satellite imagery to income tax returns to crop insurance documentations to literally the cash flow statements and whatnot. So it's really being able to unlock all these data points and better estimate risk and use that to offer more personalized solutions.
Interesting. So typically, the perception would be that fintech solutions and traditional farming are worlds apart. What challenges do you face in introducing these new fintech solutions to traditional farming communities?
Uh, that's that's the that's a really wonderful question and one that I live pretty much on a day-to-day basis. You know, as you said, right, everybody expects there to be a lot of resistance with the farming community around new technologies, but the reality is, I don't think there's more technology and progression in any other industry as compared to ag. Why? Literally, it starts with the seed, genetics, and all the crazy bioengineering that goes on there. Then the chemicals. Now we have this whole new segment of biologicals. So you aren't applying chemistry, but biological products. There's hundreds of products launched every year in any given market. There's dozens of big companies pushing from an R&D perspective. There is a lot of movement and nuances that come from grain marketing, being able to market and sell your commodities, all the supply chain warehousing nuances, and throw into all of those complexities, a nice flavor of weather uncertainties. And, it really gets to a place where, either you are forward looking, really open to anything that is going to make a meaningful difference, or you are a farmer that's going to be out of business. And so farmers in reality are really forward looking, really tech driven. Like all the precision technology we see out there, John Deere tractors these days are insanely precise, self driving, and those technologies have been here in ag for a while. Uh, just that, it's not been perceived that way. As for the financial technology side of the equation, this a lot of players in ag. You have alternate investors, you have government subsidized, organizations across the globe. You have private companies, and again, multinational corporations, all in the finance space, financing, all the way from, John Deere financing tractors, for example, to, a local bank financing, a farm purchase or whatnot. So I feel in ag, while there is resistance, but I think it really comes down to, resistance being due to this overwhelming amount of new things coming out each year. It's really okay. Where do I pitch in and choose to make a move forward, right? Where do I pick and choose? So it's really what it comes down to. Obviously, I'm not gonna say that digital literacy and internet access is a problem that's been resolved and solved across the globe. Like it's highly variable, as well as the need for a ton of localized solutions depending on what crop and what geography and what economic conditions you're at. And that's where I think fintech truly can make a much bigger impact than most other ways of offering financial services to farmers.
Now, talk us through a case study where your AI driven approach did significantly improve, or shall I say, sprouted a more positive financial outlook for any particular farm.
Absolutely. The company I work for, Growers Edge, we work with a lot of channel partners, ag retailers, manufacturers, among others, to bring new and innovative financial services to growers, farmers. One example I'll pick on, which is really close to home for me, living here in Iowa, would be, uh, I personally know this individual who works with who's a farmer who is a customer of one of our partners, and he was trying to convince his father to, uh, you know, uh, try to reduce input costs by reducing fertilizers on the farm. He's personally passionate more about the environment, but also with commodity pressures and whatnot that we've seen over the last year or two, and high interest rates. It was more imminent that hey, fertilizers being a big expense point, if we can reduce some expenses there, should yield positively. Obviously, the biggest reason of over application of fertilizers across the globe is the sensitivity of fertilizers to yields, and nobody wants to reduce fertilizers lest they lose yields, even though fertilizer are the biggest input. So, long story short, one of our offerings is called the Cropland Warranty, one of the most advanced products our startup has to offer today, is a program that's offered through different associations, as well as retailers and other organizations to farmers who want to make bold steps, in terms of adopting different products or new practices. In this case, it was a practice which is reduced fertilizer usage. And so they were able to leverage the warranty, which kind of guaranteed yield outcomes, and gave them the confidence to go for it. Now, keep in mind, the farmers don't pay for our warranty; it's some other entity that does pay to help drive adoption of these new practices and products. And so the said individual was able to really convince his dad to, yep, let's reduce some fertilizer. I believe at the end they ended up reducing input costs by something like 15% on a third of their farm, which is what they targeted with this initiative. And with commodity pressures and whatnot, they did yield comparably to previous years and what they expected. And the important thing was this did have an impact of roughly 20% on their margins for the acres they tried this on. So, very specific example here, but 20% improvement in profit margins, it's a big deal. And that's what they were able to accomplish just by making a change. Obviously, a risky one, but one that paid off through some level of security that we offered.
No risk, no reward, as they say. But looking at the future of crop insurance, how do you see that evolving with the integration of big data and machine learning?
Absolutely. One, I'll pick on the US markets where I would say crop insurance is probably more advanced by way of being a little more personalized and a lot of options available to farmers. 10, 15, 20 years ago, most farmers were choosing to go for yield protection, aka X bushels. If not, government would, backed insurance programs would pay them out. It's now most of the farmers are going to revenue protection, which does account for commodity prices and whatnot. So we can already see a big drastic shift to how various entities are taking the risk on even for farmers. And lately there's also been margin protection that's been introduced, which tries to optimize actual margins for farmers and consequently, help them protect their margins really. But one other whole different world that has emerged out of what I would say data and analytics lately has been parametric insurance, which has grown rapidly in the US over the last decade, as well as in other developing nations like India and Brazil, where really the biggest impact to crops is weather, and weather is easily captured through parametric, models. And so, well, really, if it doesn't rain enough, you'll get X dollars because it's likely going to hurt your, pasture land, and consequently, you'll have to spend money to buy food for your cattle, and so on. So I think parametric insurance has been exciting because it reduces administrative costs substantially. It takes away the need for a lot of humans in the loop. So the growers can directly benefit from technology and, pretty much see if they're, eligible for a claim based on parametric outcomes and whatnot. So I think that's really exciting. And obviously, as we go forward, we're expecting a big shift in the leveraging of IoT in setting benchmarks and approving claims and whatnot more real time than not. So indeed, an exciting time in this space.
Wonderful. What are the most promising areas for investment at the intersection of agriculture and fintech?
Uh, I'll pretty much come back to what I'm super passionate about and why I'm even in this space. It really comes back to building digital financing platforms for pretty much farmers across the planet, specifically smallholder farmers, which are, from a numeric standpoint, a much bigger population, but also substantially at a disadvantage when it comes to custom or aggressive financial offerings that they can access. And I think that's really, for me, the biggest promising area because while it's low value but high volume opportunity, it does have the effect of making a huge difference to all and rural communities because most of them are at least impacted by ag in some way or form or the other. That said, getting specific, I think again that digital platforms is a big space, like we've seen in the consumer financing space and whatnot, like or you have better insurtech solutions, or of course, like the one I alluded to. There's a lot of startups, a lot of companies in this space already. Precision ag is another insanely exciting space where digital advisors can be better leveraged through modeling and AI and whatnot to make it, to provide advising and consulting to farmers with specific situations at hand, but also backing them up through some sort of financial guarantees and whatnot. So I think at the end of the day, it comes back to, hey, we expect you to increase your yield if you do X, Y, and Z, or protect your yields if you do A, B, and C, and really be able to back it up with some sort of a assurance guarantee as well as the ability to finance. Sometimes help finance sustainability transitions and whatnot. So there's a lot of promising investment areas, uh, generally because of that reason.
And I imagine your background in computer science plays a big role in helping you solve these agricultural finance problems, correct?
Absolutely. I think it's all about algorithmic thinking for me, in a nutshell, right? How can we do things differently, or what are other different things that we should be doing instead? And I think those ways of thinking, right, that you do have when you're writing some code literally translate really well into real business problems as well as you start thinking through them. Obviously, my background there has helped me understand how data is captured, pros and cons, all the other ways to do it, process data better. apply better AI models, and at the end of the day, really help drive value as an outcome of those.
Wonderful. Now, there's a concept called precision agriculture. Please explain this concept to us and hint at the potential impact it has on farm profitability.
Absolutely. Precision agriculture is one of my favorite revolutions pretty much that's going on around us. It's effectively the use of GPS enabled devices such as drones and other sensors for precise input applications and to monitor and scout, progress and outcomes. And really, the goal of this is to reduce waste and improve yields through very targeted interventions if needed. For example, if only a part of your field is being affected by a disease, then why apply a broadcast-based fertilizer if you can just maybe leverage a drone to do it, which we have now, surprisingly around us. And really, it's all about data-driven decisioning and interventions to maximize outputs while obviously minimizing the inputs, aka really helping with the margins. You minimize inputs by being very targeted, and consequently, you can maximize outputs too.
Sounds interesting. Now, blockchain, another very big buzzword. How do you see blockchain playing an impactful role in transparency and efficiency of agricultural supply chains?
Uh, this again is, a topic that comes up very frequently in the ag tech circles, and the logical path would be enabling traceability in food systems across ag and food, so you can really see where your food came from and how uh, it really came about and all those that influenced its outcomes. Obviously, it also got to do with, say organic farming or specific practices. So it can be used to certify that as well as we heard a lot about greenwashing and whatnot, and it does touch on agriculture as well because there are sustainability-driven goals and whatnot for various corporations that get involved. So blockchain again is another uh, tool that can be leveraged effectively to certify uniqueness of impact, pretty much. Because today, I think that's in the space of ag, not something that's exactly happening efficiently.
Now, what is farm level information in terms of the sensitive nature of that? What is sensitive farm level information, firstly? And then secondly, how do you address concerns about, data privacy and security around that?
Wonderful question. So obviously, most farmers across the planet farm at a personal level. So their data can be easily PII, right? Of course, as you start. And then some farmers that do have more organized operations and entities, are governed by other regulations and whatnot. Obviously, you have financial data that's probably the most sensitive, but also is data around margins. And why I put margins and financial data separately is really farmers don't want others to know about their margins because it's super easy for them to be misled in a different direction with choices and decisions once others realize people have more expendable income and whatnot. Specifically in ag, where, to my previous example, there's so many things in the market new every year. You still want to analyze and evaluate things independent of your financial circumstances to be able to make the best decision no matter what. So I would truly put, farm practice specific info as well as, farmer info, specifically around finances, as being probably the most uh, vital pieces of information that farmers want to protect. And what do we do to protect it? Really, I can talk to it from a industry standpoint. It really comes back down to ethics and trust. I think the single most important thing in ag is for uh, any organization or individual in this space to not willfully do anything wrong. Farmers, like most of us, are very forgiving, with mistakes, but that doesn't mean is that we let our guard down. So what that means is Growth Edge, for example, is a SOC 2 Type 2 compliant organization. Not that, farmers ask us about it, but that it gives us the peace of mind in knowing that yes, we are doing everything in our power to safeguard the data. Obviously, your standard cybersecurity concepts apply, secure data at rest and transition, be highly ethical in how you use it, never resell data, only share data that you're permitted to, and only if that is needed. and so on. Ideally, don't even share data if you can help it. So there are all these things, from an ethics standpoint that play, and I think they are super important and relevant to ag.
I think they're becoming more and more common across industries, right? Data privacy there's some fundamentals that would just be applicable across the board. Looking at lessons that you may have derived from the tech startup world, what lessons have you brought with you to then drive innovation in the ag space?
Uh, you know, be we are a startup as well, right? A financial technology startup today. Rapid prototyping, I think, is something that's very core key tech startup thing. That's something we've really leveraged and seen the benefit out of. It's super easy to jump to building great solutions, but super hard to make sure that they are able to have an impact. So iterative, rapid prototyping, I think, is a key thing for us. Obviously, scalability of solutions is another. While ag fintech or ag financial services aren't data heavy, ag tech generally is. And I think being able to merge those two things can have a huge impact by being able to really leverage data as it comes into, for example, harvest data real time being processed to predict or analyze cash flow and so on. So scalability becomes a big deal. Sometimes, it means dealing with huge volumes of data, huge number of growers. Being able to customize and build things as platforms, I think, is another big concept for us that's been key. Remember, I talked about highly localized markets, and that's exactly where we have to think about insane levels of customization and flexibility across our systems.
Now, this might just be a general question or in something maybe very particular to you, but how does one quantify uh, the impact of climate change on agricultural risk models?
That's a great question. At the end of the day, it really comes back to something simple that we all would expect, right? Just by incorporating historical data, being able to simulate different outcomes, based on different frameworks, as well as leveraging future climate projections. I think is really what it comes down to at the end of the day. Obviously, we are a ag fintech startup. We don't want to predict weather. That's one of the hardest things to do, and obviously, nobody's been able to convincingly figure that out. What we love doing is leveraging multiple sources of forecasts so as to evaluate the possible sample space and realistic possible sample space and really leverage that to analyze the impact to our portfolio, as well as specific growths within our portfolio, so we can provide the right kind of advisory services or intervention that we need. Uh, and again, I think it's very heavily AI driven, as you would imagine today. A lot of models going into our models, and uh, really that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. And sometimes, uh, we deem some things as higher risk. Consequently, the pricing goes up, interest rates or warranty prices and whatnot. In other cases, well, it can go the other way as well. Obviously, what does play into it is agronomic plans of how farmers intend to deal with specific circumstances. What happens if it's going to be a substantial amount of heat this year? If your farm can handle irrigation, well, that's mitigated versus not, and so on. So there's a lot that goes into it, but in a nutshell, it's weather forecasts and readiness of how to deal with specific expected circumstances.
Wonderful. Now, what are the biggest misconceptions, in your opinion, that investors have about the agri-fintech space?
But before I talk about the misconception, I guess I'll talk about what everybody knows, which is right. Ag, finance, shield tech or ag tech, it moves slow. Ag is hugely cyclical and seasonal in terms of when you plant, you harvest, or when, sometimes it might take years, sometimes it takes months between all of that. Uh, I think that part everybody gets. What people don't realize is how massive the ag industry is across the planet. Obviously, we constantly hear about, from an economic standpoint, the impact, of ag to GDPs of countries. But really, what that means is that actual financial dollars flowing through that system, and the fact that there's billions, if not hundreds of billions dollars worth of loans and financial movement happening in this industry in any given country in any given year. So it's definitely a big money industry. One, of course, where investors want to expand and diversify, but one that can also be, if invested correctly into an industry that can yield substantial growth real fast as well.
Wonderful. Yeah, you mentioned, of course, the well-known fact that there's a much slower pace of change in ag tech. How do you balance the need for rapid innovation with the slow pace?
Uh, Wonderful question again. So for us, it's really, as I said, right, incremental innovation is something that plays into things. We love introducing small but impactful changes, and that's really best done through more proactive planning and research and analysis. The other thing is really being able to work with our key stakeholders and building trust with our customers, because what does accelerate, us releasing new ideas and new technologies is really the trust that our consumers would have in us. So I think it's really exponential how fast we can go. The hardest time is the first few years till you build user base and start building trust, and then things take off from there. But also, consequently, why our fixation with long-term partnerships rather than quick wins, I think, is another big thing that plays, which again anybody in ag would agree with. Final but not the least, it's really also about being thought leader and really forward looking. So we can offer a wide spectrum of options to any partner when they're ready. Because oftentimes, if a partner is ready but we aren't, that's just wasted time. And we would rather be proactively ready for whatever our partners or customers might want. So it's definitely a combination of all these things that help us move relatively faster. And if you want to think of something parallel, would be say TurboTax, which you only use once a year to file taxes. That's literally just how cyclic ag can be sometimes. So you have to be well prepared, insanely well planned, ready to go live with these high volume times and low volume times and whatnot.
Great. Now, ag tech and sustainability can almost not exist exclusively, right? They are super mutually inclusive. And so, because of that, why is it important for business leaders in the space to prioritize sustainability? And then, how can they do it effectively?
Well, it all comes back to the greater good, right? Ag, agriculture, for example, uses up a significant portion of all land on the planet, right? And, in our case, being able to drive sustenance of that land in terms of being able to produce, food for humans and whatever other purpose future generations choose to use it for is key. So I think it really comes back to the greater good, right? Sustenance of humankind, mankind, helping all of us evolve and grow together, and make sure we're leaving a planet for future generations again. That's something they'll be happy with, and not really unhappy. So it really comes back to aligning consumer demands in different areas and spaces with any responsible decisions we can make. I think sustainability doesn't have to be big huge goals. It often can easily be adopted by making incremental changes. Drive your car a little less, get a little more uh, you know higher mileage, uh, car, across your fleet. That is, again, we're talking about businesses here. It also comes back to reducing long-term costs and, mitigating risks as an impact of climate change. And on the other side, impact to climate change really are the two steps to it. And in ag, for example, we've seen a lot of investments go into regenerative ag, mostly propelled by the offset markets and whatnot. I think while in, the general term offsets are amazing because, you are able to make up for some downfall, shortfall, from your end. But at the end of the day, I think it's really about onsets, being able to actually reduce your footprint and whatnot. And in whatever small way we can. So I can keep going around talking on this theme, but really anything incremental that we can do today, I think is more important than any lofty big goal we can set for the future. That said, having goals is still good. I'm not saying that's a bad idea, but slow movements are way better than bigger long-term plans.
100% is the little steps we take to achieve those bigger milestones, right? And to your point, I think the pre-planning and the forecasting's got a lot to do with not being caught on the back foot where a lot of wastage can come into play. This has been fantastic. Just to close up our conversation, tell us what emerging technologies you believe will have the biggest impact on the agricultural finance space in the next decade.
Uh, Absolutely. Again, I cannot start or end this conversation without mentioning AI. I think, artificial intelligence has been around for a while. It continues being so, but with the, recent uh, push with how AI started to be perceived, I think it now also maximizes the impact AI can have. Because again, it's been resistance. It's been one of those areas that's been overlooked in a lot of different ways. While, for example, AI was used to build the right hybrid of seed that you might use, it wasn't exactly leveraged to advise what seed you should be planting because the consumers didn't like that. They didn't trust algorithms over their own knowledge. And generally they were right because a farmer knows more about their fields than a machine learning algorithm would. But I think that's where the hybridization of both can have a big impact, where we are leveraging more human knowledge and really leveraging AI from a co-pilot perspective, as we've seen so successfully in other industries, as well as Internet of Things, IoT, I think is going to continue growing and making a huge impact. And I think we all can imagine a world where drones and robots do everything on the farm, and humans can sit back and relax and just uh, reap the benefits of the machine's labor in this case. But I think we are a long ways away from that. But there's so many companies, so many ways that innovation is happening today. It's just mind blowing. So I think that a lot more automation, absolutely. And then finally, I do think there's more impact that remote sensing can have on the industry than it's been able to just yet. I'm particularly excited about that. And final but not least, again, more better digital platforms and frameworks that allow for more personalization of decisions and planning and outcome management, pretty much.
Excellent. Thank you. This has been Mr. Ahraz Husain, the pioneer at the intersection of agriculture and finance, making slow but steady progress. This is The Harvest. I'm Carmel Fisher. You stay tuned for more. That's it for The Harvest, available anywhere you find podcasts. Stay tuned for more.